just to check we're in the same room and the conversations you've had, the kind of purpose that we gave ourselves as a planning group and a group of people around this was to think about raising the profile and the voice across community development across London. Because the feeling was that community development is an amazing resource that is not being used, not being appreciated. There's a whole history of radical and effective action, and now more than ever it needs to come to the fore. We also wanted to prioritise this idea of new conversations and new understandings. You know, there's a lot of terminology. There isn't one definition of what community development really is. Different people have different takes. But the world is changing very fast around us as well. So how do we move within that kind of framework? It's really important that we reflect. So the reflection and the action kind of go together. So very much this is a space in terms of the conversations and your own work as practitioners, people that are active and so on, about thinking on what you're doing, what other people are doing, and how that can be transformed and rethought. Second to last one, I think really we're kind of very keen on having an independent, critical and an influential movement. So all of those things I think can go together. It's quite a challenge, as we know, but it needs to be critical, it needs to be challenging, it needs to be reflecting the kind of really sharp issues that are happening in our communities. And I think community development, like no other thing, really does that. And then, of course, the value of networking. Not just the digital, but the people, the conversations, all of that. Seeking out peer-to-peer support, whether that's formally or most likely informally, in terms of sparking ideas and problem solving together that we do. There's a learning aspect of that, the kind of the need for thinking about the learning agenda, the skills, etc. And I think we're here to challenge one another constructively, to inspire one another, and to move together. So in terms of the overall purpose, yes, to raise the profile and the voice of community development, and I think in the afternoon we'll be thinking about the practicalities of some of that in particular. But those subset there. Just because I like using this as well, I think the Sankofa Bird, the Ghanaian symbol, the reflection and action, it seems that in the busyness of life, we don't get that opportunity. We're kind of deluged with demands, pressures, having to prove our impact, etc. So I do think this is a real privilege to be here with so many practitioners to kind of think through where we are and where we want to be, and to kind of reclaim some of the past traditions and learnings that we've got. Agenda, very quickly. I kind of think it's a meeting of two halves, really, an event of two halves. So there's going to be the kind of presentations, some dialogue, questions around those. So you've got the agenda, you know what that is. We've got some very broad kind of policy stuff, yeah, which you're going to hear about. And then comfort break, always good, more networking and so on. From about 11:30, we're looking at think about learning from what works. So we really wanted to kind of hear about some very local or specific kind of case studies. So what are the things that community development is experiencing in real places, real activities, to kind of showcase some of that as well. So again, we'll kind of open that out. And maybe in the morning we'll be thinking, there will be ideas sparking about voice, about how we build together as well. We're looking to kind of introduce not a pure open space process, but along those lines. So before lunch, we'll be canvassing for ideas for the kind of conversations that you want to have in the afternoon. And we've put forward some of those and what they might be. But as you know with open space, and we'll explain it if you're not familiar with it, it is kind of very much driven by you, by your content and kind of conversations that you want to have. So we have our lunch, then we have the table discussions. You will have noticed that we have next door as well. Felt like it would be really useful in terms of those group discussions that we have as much space as we possibly can. So people will be invited into there. We're kind of thinking about 8 or 9 or 10 different conversations, so we might have to try and pull together some of those things. We've got a Twitter wall, not as a technical person myself, but you know these things do have a habit of taking off, so please feel free not only to tweet, but check out what other people are doing. And so obviously we have our conversations, we kind of come back, we draw out what we think we're saying. I think the brilliant thing would be if people can focus on specific actions that they can do or potentially collectively we can do, so that we can follow up really quickly. So there's a kind of a putting together, identifying consensus. So that I think is what's in store for us today. Again, it's something that I like to use, but I kind of wanted to think about all the top-down stuff that we hear about, but really an appreciation about how so much action, so much kind of goodwill in our communities is, you know, what the Third Sector Research Centre calls below the radar, really, but really thinking about the grassroots activity and how we can be supportive of that, or if we're doing it ourselves, kind of manifesting it. So I think there's something about our policy people that they're not getting, in terms of always talking about the formality of charity, but not the informality of community action, and how there's some very real skills that can unlock that. Some of the questions and thoughts, my last slide, I'm going to hand over quickly. I did say it'd be great to kind of think through in our praxis, in our reflections, you know, not only the issues, but the actions. So the issues, the solutions, but in particular, being kind of as precise as we can be about actions that maybe collectively CDNL can move forward with, or that other networks can as well. I put something in the pack about Community Development Network London. I don't propose to talk about it now, but maybe after the lunch I can say a bit more about it. Basically, it's a kind of fairly free, unconstituted network that's been going for about 10 years, but I'll say that a bit more. I think one of the things that personally and I know others would like to see happen, is a real joining up of networks, a real kind of effort to coalition build. And I don't think there's one blueprint or perfect way of doing that, but I think kind of magnifying our effectiveness kind of horizontally through networks, maybe through a federated structure of co-ops or similar, I think is profoundly important. I do think there's a real challenge about sustainability and governance. And I'm sure we all share the same thing of being involved with many loose kind of forums that are incredibly difficult to sustain because they're run on next to nothing, really. So I'm kind of interested in that conversation about how we can support ourselves and make it more sustainable, if possible. I do think there's a range of allies from other sectors out there, and I think we need them like never before in terms of the community development world. Possibly with universities. I teach on several community development courses, and I'm amazed with the passion of the young people that I teach, but I don't necessarily see them connected in with some of the stuff that we do as in our more professional world. There are some really good examples out there. So I think things like universities, maybe unions, maybe small business, maybe the tech sector as well, I think, who are really interested in radical political change as well sometimes. I think there's some real fabulous people that we can kind of reach out to. And I kind of briefly wanted to think about, it probably feels like we've all been here before. So I kind of was reflecting about, I remember the Community Development Challenge, I remember CDF did a rethink in 2010 about big society. And one of the things, and you know, there's value in that, I'm sure, but I'm kind of thinking about what is it that we need to learn from the past about how these things didn't necessarily get as much traction as they could have done, anyway. So that kind of makes me puzzle, and we see the same thing about the debate about independence in the sector, report after report. So what is it that's going to make the difference there? Some people will know that in Birmingham, in the Third Sector Research Centre, roughly last year, Angus McCabe, Mandy Wilson and myself, we did a large event kind of thinking about ways forward for the community development. And that was tied in with Community Development Foundation not being, closing down after, I think, about 50 years. And some of the thoughts that I thought was, before there are recognisably national organisations, there needs to be a really strong local base, and hopefully a strong regional base as well, a kind of a roadshow, to kind of think about that more nationally. So I just reference that in terms of, there is a debate around the future of community development, etc. But where's the reality? Where's the conversations on the ground, and how does that kind of connect up? You know, how do we build from a local base rather than, you know, the national bubble? And then finally, just wanted to say the conversations that I have with lots of practitioners as well is that CD skills make all the difference when the programmes kind of crash into communities. There's a phrase that Marilyn Taylor used about, is it window dressing or a window of opportunity? And I'm sure we all share a lot of frustrations. We've seen all this before about interventions that kind of move into a community, and then there's something profoundly unsatisfactory sometimes about how it doesn't stick. And I think the way of unlocking that frustration, I think, is really bound up in community development in its better moments, transforming that situation in terms of the values and so on. So that's myself. I just wanted to kind of kick off in terms of what the day was.